Good evening.
Morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best
Hello, UU family. I'm going to sing a song with you called Shine on Me. It's an amazing spiritual that anybody can sing. And in these days when the things that we're dealing with, the feeling separate and all of that, and things seem so hard, this is one of those songs that you just throw your head back in your medicine kit. All you have to do is ask. And here's how it goes. Shine on me, oh shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh shine on me. Yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. Lift me up, oh, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, lift me up. Yes, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up. Oh, hold me close. Yes, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse hold me close. Yes, hold me close. So hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse, please hold me close. Oh, shine on me, shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. Oh, shine on me. Hello, UU family. I'm going to sing a song with you called Shine on Me. It's an amazing spiritual that anybody can sing. And in these days when the things that we're dealing with, the feeling separate and all of that, and things seem so hard, this is one of those songs that you just throw your head back, put it in your medicine kit. All you have to do is ask. And here's how it goes. Shine on me, oh shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. Lift me up, oh, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, lift me up, yes, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, hold me close, yes, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse hold me close, yes, hold me close, oh, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse, please, hold me close. Oh, shine on me, shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh, shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me.
Good morning. It is nice to see all of you here today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Topeka. This is our Sunday program, or service, if you prefer, for April 3, 2022. This is the fifth in a series of programs on racial justice offered by the First Sunday team, Lauren Christ, Vicki George, Janine Selsby, and me, Lou Hoover. Thank you for your address. For discussion following the service, but there will be no talkback today. We merely ask that you listen with your ears and your heart. What seems to change over the span of 8 years? What seems to always be the same? What hopes have our speakers had? What disappointments? And now, a few announcements. As you may have heard, we're having a rummage sale Friday and Saturday. We will need your donations this week. We will be open every day, mainly in the afternoons. Let Jana or Rob Cook know. If you need to deliver your items in the morning hours, please bring any plastic or paper bags you have. More information is listed in an email on both UU Facebook pages and on posters in the gathering space and on doors. We are also asking for your donations of homemade cookies, brownies, and cinnamon rolls, or whatever other delicious things you have. A bake sale will be held the same days. There's also popcorn for sale. Volunteers are needed. Sign-up sheets are available in the gathering space. We have many blanks to fill. Remember, it takes a village. And then in May, there will be a plant sale. That will be May 27th, a Saturday. Next week's Sunday program is Planning for a Better End of Life. Next month's Racial Justice program will cover microaggressions and allyship. And we're also in the midst of a pledge drive, and we need to raise $165,000. There's pledge information and forms back there on that little table, and there's also a box. If you want to go ahead and fill out your pledge and stick it in the box, you'll be done. Are there any other announcements? Okay. Sign-up sheet for
Greeters and ushers.
Greeters, okay. Always needing greeters. And while that is going around, I'll do the chalice lighting. For our chalice lighting, we are again using Prayer for Living Intention by Joseph M. Cherry. Your First Sunday team has adopted this as our personal guide. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. And now, are there any joys or concerns? No one sent me any, but we'll take late entries from the floor. Okay. Yeah.
I'm Dennis Bosley. We had a super good meeting at the Shawnee County Health Department on Friday. with Shawnee County Department of Corrections and Vallejo and the district court, and keep your eyes on us. And we think we're on a roll here. Just sequential intercept mapping, getting people out of the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, now we'll have the offering.
Are we willing to love this faith and love ourselves enough not to settle for the world as it is, but to build and inhabit the world we dream about? Will we trust this faith that does believe in the power of love, trust this faith enough to help us find a new way, a way out of no way? Because it is only together that we can find the will not to look away this time. The Reverend William Sinkford. Last week's important service concerned the fifth principle, which reads, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. That program, the discussion after that, sent this first Sunday team scrambling to completely revise the service for today. We will get back to allyship, but we could not let this opportunity for a segue into how UU congregational and national polity, i.e. governmental structures, are based on internalized and structural racism, or more precisely, white dominance. And who better to talk to us about that than a few of the powerful Black UU voices already in our midst. This morning, we're listening to Black UU voices. Kenny Wiley, the Reverend William Sinkford, the Reverend Adam Dyer. And yes, we did get permission from all three to use their eloquent words. First of all, Kenny Wiley. He was a senior editor for the UU World from 2015 to 2018. He was on the founding team of BLUE, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalists. He's also a friend of my daughter, the Reverend Beth Chronister. But sadly, he's no longer a UU. The following appeared on his blog, a full day on October 15th, 2014, entitled, Who Are My People? A Black Unitarian Universalist on Selma and Ferguson.
Wintertime in Houston sneaks up on you. As children, we sweated in our Halloween costumes, and some years played the big Thanksgiving basketball game in shorts. That first 40-degree day in early December alerted us it was time to ask our parents for money for Christmas shopping. It was such a 40-degree day in my 9th year, a Sunday, when an adult said words that will stick with me. It means so much that your family worships here with us, Kenneth. It shows how far your people have come. Baffled doesn't quite say it. I thought that folks at my church were my people. I'm a proud, lifelong Unitarian Universalist. My roommates will tell you that some days I sing Spirit of Life to myself as I make breakfast. Coming of age and YRUU summer camps brought me ever-mingled comfort and stress. I am also Black. The struggle for Black freedom has long held a grip on my soul. In adolescence, not even complicated high school romance got me feeling quite like Toni Morrison and Lorraine Hansberry could. I love being Unitarian Universalist, I think. I love being Black, I know. During college, I joined a great UU congregation. They were thrilled to have me, and I them. Older adults had me over for dinner and looked out for me on campus. When my mom died, church staff and members alike wrote cards and weren't afraid to ask me how I was doing. There were also only 2 Black men active in the church, and the other gentleman's first name was my last. Though he was older than my father, it took some folks 2 years to stop getting us confused. Sometimes it was funny and sometimes it hurt, but it always reminded me that I was not fully at home. In Soul Work, Anti-Racist Theologies and Dialogue, UU minister and scholar Rosemary Bray McNatt relays the story of the time she talked for an hour with Coretta Scott King, widow of Dr. King. Mrs. King told Reverend Bray McNatt, "Oh, I went to Unitarian churches for years, even before I met Martin, and Martin and I went to Unitarian churches when we were in Boston." Mrs. King continued, "We gave a lot of thought to becoming Unitarian one time, but Martin and I realized we could never build a mass movement of Black people if we were Unitarian." The first time I read that, during my failed attempt to do seminary and become a UU minister, tears came down my face like a mighty stream. Night after night, I read that passage from Reverend Bray McNatt's chapter in the book. Night after night, I wept. I cried because I understood. I understood why they would choose to root themselves in a Black church and with a suffering God who could help Black people and tell them he would never forsake them or give up on them, even in death. I teared up also because I've often wished I could leave UUism. Sometimes I feel so alone because of race. I need church, though, almost by default. This faith is my religious home. I believe in God, but don't call God he. Unless Jesus somehow finds me, I cannot in good conscience join a Christian church. Experience has taught me that being Black and UU means feeling great most of the time, yet waiting for the next microaggression, the next moment of non-belonging. It is to feel profoundly uncomfortable in the midst of the familiar. Growing up, I needed to figure out how to navigate a mostly white society that accepted me quite warmly, so long as I did little to rock the boat. I had no real Black community to help me out, save for a few friends and 2 extended family members. Talking about race with many white UUs too often means shouldering their insecurities, patiently answering their questions, making the fight for racial justice appear warm and inviting. It isn't. On Facebook, I'm quite active. On Twitter, I have few followers and mostly read. I follow young adult activists who fight for racial equality, champion Black feminism, and struggle for change. Mostly they are people of color, often also members of the LGBTQ community. They are not conciliatory. They regularly call white people out, challenge POC men's sexism, and support one another. They live out theologian Alan Bosak's words from The Courage to be Black. No one person has the right to take our life into their hands and to exercise the power to give our life to us or withhold it from us. From them, the way is clear and straightforward, albeit difficult. For them, white people, even, or perhaps especially, well-meaning white liberals, mostly get in the way, recenter themselves, and derail conversations. These folks are mostly done with the mainstream society that blindly trusts conventional authority. I mostly agree with their analysis and support them with favorites, retweets, and small financial contributions. All the community they need is with each other. Nothing is so straightforward for me. Most people in my life are white. I cannot so easily dismiss them, nor do I want to. White individuals have caused me stress, and others have been there for me. White people have told me awful race jokes I never want again to hear, and white people have marched alongside me at rallies and protests. Some may read this as internalized racial oppression. It is. I am shaped by my upbringing. Many privileged black folks revel in being accepted by white America and opting out of blackness. I want no such thing. I am black and proud. Being authentically black, for me, means something a bit different. When Mike Brown was killed by Officer Darren Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri in August, something fundamentally shifted within. I felt called to act, to organize rallies and vigils in Denver. Planning these rallies terrified me, but not because I feared the inevitable white backlash. I worried I wasn't black enough. I thought my being a Unitarian Universalist would put me on the margins of the movement. I was wrong. A black Christian pastor I met at a Denver rally said to me, "As long as you're not ashamed of your blackness, you can be one of them and one of us at the same time." And so it is. At rallies for racial justice in Denver, UU ministers and lay people have shown up. I've looked out and seen my people. They are black folks and white UUs. This is, it seems, less true nationally. Our faith has a complicated racial history and a less than stellar record on race presently. St. Louis area UUs put out a call for ministers, and UUs came to Ferguson to be present for Ferguson October. Some, like Reverend Dr. Teresa Cooley and Reverend Julie Taylor, were there and proved vital, but not enough. Hundreds of UUs are planning to go to Selma, Alabama in March 2015 for the 50th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March. Reverend Mark Morrison Reed writes in the Selma Awakening that, after years of absence, UUs came through and journeyed to Selma. Reverend Morrison Reed argues that in Selma, Unitarian Universalists' values and practice snapped into alignment with their espoused values. Last summer, I went to Selma as part of a moving road trip through the South. With a friend, I walked from Brown Chapel to the Edmund Pettus Bridge on a muggy June evening. On the way, we stopped at the marker honoring Reverend James Reed, the white Unitarian minister from Boston who was killed after answering Dr. King's call for clergy to come to Selma. Kneeling in front of Reverend Reeb's marker drove me to tears and to an understanding of history's importance. Finally, after ignoring the race problem for years, we showed up in Selma. But 50 years later, if we UUs show up in Selma in 2015, but not in Ferguson right now, and not for all those black and brown victims of police violence in the sadly inevitable future, we will not have learned from our past. The harrowing truth is that I could be the next Mike Brown. My household had 2 parents. I have a college degree and a job. My pants don't sag. When I'm out protesting or canvassing, though, none of that matters. I cannot opt out of blackness, and I do not want to. In the wrong situation, though, my respectable nature may not save me from a racist police officer or citizen, nor from the ensuing character assassination. I would go from the decent, reasonably friendly guy some of you know to a mentally deranged, I have depression, Harvard dropout who was no angel and deserved what he got. I know some of my people, black people, would come to my defense. Some UUs and other friends would too. But would there be a broad movement on my behalf? Or would faith members send my dad and sisters thoughts and prayers before moving on? These questions keep me up at night. There are so many things to fight and fight for in the world. We do a mostly great job on climate justice and immigration. Our LGBTQ work has saved and changed lives. Black lives, too, are worth fighting for. When the next Ferguson happens, and sadly it will, we can and must do more. We have to show up, be willing to follow others, and be willing to change ourselves. Unitarian Universalists, you are my people. And UUs, my other people, of which some of you are, need you. We need you to show up. We need you to listen and go beyond platitudes. Not everyone can travel hundreds of miles, but we can all do something beyond what we thought we could do. October 22nd is National Day Against Police Brutality, and several cities are hosting events. The next call to action for racial justice has arrived. My people, will we answer? My people want to know.
Since 2010, the Reverend William, known as Bill Sinkford, has been the senior minister of First Unitarian Church, Portland, Oregon, one of our bigger churches, the denomination. He was president of the Unitarian Universalist Association from 2001 to 2009, the first African American to lead any traditionally white denomination, and was named one of the 10 most influential black religious leaders in the U.S. in both 2005 and 2006. This sermon is from the UU General Assembly in 2016. And by the way, this is from his sermon at the Service for the Living Tradition, which is the service that they give that recognizes ministers 4 times. When you get preliminary fellowship, when you get final fellowship, Beth has walked at 2 different GAs, when you retire, and then unfortunately your picture when you die. So it's a pretty big deal to speak at this particular assembly. So.
Our reading this evening is drawn from Between the World and Me by author Ta-Nehisi Coates. You may know him from his articles in The Atlantic. Coates is African American, and the book is written as a long letter to his 15-year-old son. That was the week you learned that the killers of Michael Brown would go free. The men who had left his body in the street like some awesome declaration of their inviolable power would never be punished. It was not my expectation that anyone would be punished, but you were young and still believed. You stayed up till 11 p.m. that night, waiting for the announcement of an indictment. And when instead it was announced that there was none, you said, "I've got to go." And you went into your room, and I heard you crying. I came in 5 minutes after, and I did not hug you, and I didn't comfort you, because I thought it would be wrong to comfort you. I did not tell you that it would be okay, because I have never believed that it would be okay. What I told you is what your grandparents tried to tell me, that this is your country, that this is your world, that this is your body, and you must find some way to live within the all of it. Here ends our reading. This is our country, and this is our faith, and we must find some way to live within the all of it. May 1966, I was in Hollywood, Florida, a youth leader attending my first General Assembly on my way to the Ware lecture. And the doors of the elevator opened, and there he was, standing with his attendants. "May I shake your hand? Dr. King, I'm so honored to meet you." "What is your name, young man?" "Bill Sinkford." "And where are you from, son?" "Cincinnati, Ohio, sir." "Well, there's plenty of work yet to do in Cincinnati." We reached the ground floor, and he moved off to the green room to prepare to preach. And preach he did, a prophetic sermon urging our faith not to sleep through the revolution. Stay woke, as the movement for Black Lives urges us today. How can I describe it for those of you who were not even born then? It felt like we were in the midst of a revolution, and that Unitarian Universalists were important actors in the revolutionary drama. Dr. King called on the church to lead. When the church is true to its nature, he said, it stands as the moral guardian of society. He called on the church and on each one of us to be maladjusted to the structures of society that corrupt and oppress, and every head in the audience nodded in affirmation. The rhetoric was vintage MLK. It may be true that the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. The law cannot make a person love me, but it can restrain that person from lynching me. Still, Dr. King claimed that love was not only present, but at the very heart of the revolution in which we were engaged. And our faith community listened with rapt attention. Dr. King ended with the vision of the beloved community. His sermonic close returned to the dream. We will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of unity and speed up that day when all God's children will be able to walk the earth as brothers and sisters, as siblings, and then we can sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty we are free at last." And thousands of Unitarian Universalists, many like me with tears streaming down their faces, rose in thunderous applause. You see, we were ready to redeem the American dream. We were ready to take our place in the revolution. Well, what was our role to be? James Baldwin, writing just 3 years before in The Fire Next Time, put it this way: if we, the relatively conscious ones, who must, like lovers, create the consciousness of others, if we do not falter in our duty now, we may be able to end the racial nightmare and achieve our country and change the history of the world. Unitarian Universalists, we were more than ready to claim that role as some of the conscious ones. Not relatively conscious, mind you. Most Unitarian Universalists listening to Dr. King believed that they were fully enlightened and up to the task of enlightening others. Arrogance, you see, has been a spiritual issue with us for a very long time. And that black youth leader, me, well, I believed it too. And I was filled with hope, not only for our nation, but for this faith. 1966, 50 years ago. So many dreams deferred, so many dreams denied. How did we get from I Have a Dream to the new Jim Crow and the massacre in Orlando? 50 years on, how did Unitarian Universalism get from that commitment to redeem the American dream to the need to hang Black Lives Matter banners on our churches and stand vigil as the pulse of life is brutally cut short once again by hate? Did we fall asleep at the switch? Well, that's hard to argue when marriage equality is now the law of the land, there's greater opportunity for women and girls, and the Americans with Disabilities Act is now in place. It's not that progress is complete on any of those fronts, but we've been hard at work. We've marched, we've petitioned, we've protested, many of us. But the racial nightmare has not been ended. And religious bigotry, xenophobia, and homophobia are still used to justify hatred. In fact, we found more excuses to keep us divided than most of us could have imagined 50 years ago. Did we somehow take our eyes off the prize? Or did Dr. King's dream provide a flawed lens that prevented us from seeing all that we needed to see? Dr. King, some of you will remember, continued to expand that dream, addressing militarism, income inequality, and immigrant workers. I wonder if he would be so revered if he had not been killed. Because America insisted on embracing not Dr. King's expanding and challenging vision of the beloved community, which embraced more and more and more of us, but the far more comfortable dream of equal opportunity and the vision of innocent children sitting together at the American table, or at least in the American schoolroom, that dream which was centered more on love than on struggle. I wonder what Dr. King would preach to us today. I'm sure that he would have built gender equality and women's reproductive rights into his vision. Sexual orientation and gender identity absolutely would be there. People of color would probably be his language, not just black and white. All of those things, I think, would be there. But more. I think he would condemn the war on drugs just as he condemned the Vietnam War, and for the same reason. Both are waged on the backs of the poor and people of color. I think he would be calling income inequality a moral failure, not just an economic reality, and I think he would rail against religious bigotry, the building of walls on our borders, and the banning of Muslims from our shores. He would call people of faith to be divinely dissatisfied with the world as it is now, just as he was divinely dissatisfied with the world as it was when he lived. But he would also be asking why corporations and entertainers pull out of states that try to roll back LGBTQ rights, but not when states roll back voting rights. And for all our progress on these other issues, as important as they are, he would be insistent that the beloved community will always be incomplete, flawed, its very foundation compromised, until the racial nightmare is ended. Now, Dr. King is not with us now, and so it falls to us to find and hold a dream for the beloved community. That is our religious work. Our religious work, not my religious work. Because like people of color in progressive communities all around the world, I've been trying to fix this problem all my life. And in Unitarian Universalism, I've been trying to help us move toward wholeness on the issue of race for decades. If I had the solution, if I had a magic wand to wave, some answer that could transform us and our world, we would have been living in the beloved community for years now. And I don't pretend to have that answer, but I do have a message. There are some things that I think I know. There is a reason that our nation hastened to embrace that warm and fuzzy dream of an American welcome table, where exceptional individuals can transcend their circumstances. That dream allowed us all, but especially white Americans, to maintain a belief in their own innocence. And I hear statements of innocence all the time. I never owned any slaves. I didn't create the war on drugs. Some of my best friends are Muslim, Mexican, gay, put in the category that you would like to think about. I'm not a bigot. Now, most of us have done enough work to understand the flaws in that logic. Most of us have. But Ta-Nehisi Coates argues that it is exactly that American dream of white innocence from which we most need to awaken. He writes, "The process of washing the disparate tribes white, the elevation of the belief in the dream of being white, was not achieved through wine tastings and ice cream socials, but rather through the pillaging of life, liberty, labor, and land. And these new white people have forgotten the scale of the theft that enriched them. They have forgotten because to remember would tumble them out of the beautiful dream and force them to live down here with us, down here in the world. In the dream, they are Buck Rogers, Prince Aragorn, a whole tribe of Skywalkers. To awaken them is to reveal that they are merely an empire of humans. The American dream, this new white identity, it requires a vivid performance of innocence, as one commentator describes it, despite the truth that there is no actual innocence and there never was. Now I'm going to bring it on home here. Even progressive religious folks, even Unitarian Universalists, have to give up our innocence. You see, despite the fact that we were ready to sign on to Dr. King's dream, we soon pulled back as a faith community when it became clear that the passage of a few laws was not going to save us. Some of us remember the late 1960s and early 70s. It was a time when dreams of integration were challenged by demands for black empowerment, days when it got too hard and painful for our congregations to stay involved. You can read about that period if you did not live it. It's often called the black empowerment controversy. I prefer to describe it as a fit of white entitlement. So you can read about that period if you did not live it, but the reality is that we withdrew. And when our faith withdrew from the racial justice conversation, many, many people of color who had joined us withdrew too. Feeling betrayed, we left Unitarian Universalism. I was one of them, but there were so many others. And I could call some of their names, but you do not know them because they are not here. They did not find their way back to this faith like I did, and we will never know what this faith might look like or be like today if they could have remained. Our faith looked away. We did not stay woke. And whether we feel guilt for that or shame, and even if we denied it, the truth is that we, all of us, are complicit. We did not prevent the racial nightmare from continuing. Just as we have not ended homophobia for all of our work and witness, there is no innocence left for any of us. And there's one more thing. Ta-Nehisi Coates tells his son, "Here is what I want you to know. In America, it is traditional to destroy the black body. It is heritage." Coates' son needs to know that his body is at risk, that he can be killed with impunity, just as my son and my grandsons need to know that, just as I know it every time I drive on rural roads at night or am stopped on city streets. In America, it is traditional to destroy the black body and the gay body and the immigrant body. It is heritage. Now, these are hard words, but they explain so much. Ferguson and Tamir Rice make sense. The new Jim Crow, racial profiling, violence on the border, even Orlando, it is of a piece. And I've known these things all my life. On these issues, I consider myself to be one of the conscious ones, but Coates forced even me to confront truths that I would rather avoid, because I would rather believe in the power of love. You know I would, and so would you. What I know is this: we are being given another chance. The racial justice and just plain justice movement, Black Lives Matter, that emerged out of the tragedies on the streets of Ferguson and Cleveland and Baltimore and Portland, where I serve, that movement is offering us the chance to claim a fuller and ultimately a more hopeful dream. And even the response to Orlando is also helping to point the way. Let me ask you, how many of you stood vigil in your community last week? Raise your hands. How many joined with others, lit a candle, said a prayer, heard the names called? The image of those vigils is where I am seeing hope this week. The rainbow flags were most easily seen, but if you looked just a bit more closely, you saw all of us present there, young and old, queer and straight, cisgender and transgender, Muslim men and Muslim women with their heads covered, Christians, Jews, atheists, Unitarian Universalists, Latinos and Anglos, black and brown, and many, many shades of beige. We were all there. The tragedy of Orlando calls us to demolish the walls around our vision and claim that fundamental universalist truth that we are all children of God, each and every one of us. The vigils called us to stand in solidarity in our grief and to stand as a community of resistance. Resistance to the hate and the bigotry and the fear. We were communities of resistance that gathered. And perhaps that is how we need to begin to understand ourselves. Not as the already conscious leaders waiting for the deluded dreamers to awaken, but as one community of resistance struggling to stay awake and aware ourselves. One community of resistance to the hate and the violence, ready to partner with other communities of resistance. Climate activists showing up at Black Lives Matter demonstrations and Black Lives Matter banners marching in pride parades. Begin to see ourselves as communities of resistance, willing to build a more embracing dream together. Because resistance is what love looks like in the face of hate. And resistance is what love looks like in the face of violence. Are we willing to live as if the beloved community is more than just an idle dream? Are we willing to love this faith and love ourselves enough not to settle for the world as it is, but to build and inhabit the world we dream about? Will we trust this faith that does believe in the power of love? Will we trust this faith enough to help us find a new way? A way out of no way, because it is only together that we can find the courage and the will not to look away this time.
Blog, Spiritual Wellness, March 2022, and was suggested to us by former member Oshara Misha.
I am currently in the process of returning to work after a 5-month medical leave. In September, I realized that stress, internal organizational conflicts, and pressures had simply gotten to be too much for me. I was not caring for my body. I could not wind down, and sleep had become a lost crapshoot. As a 56-year-old man and a former wellness professional, I knew I was doing everything I used to tell people not to do in order to avoid having a stroke or heart attack. Most graciously, my congregation, specifically my board and committee on ministry, advocated for and granted me time off. In my absence, the congregation rose to the challenge, and the staff put out a Herculean effort and a ministerial colleague who was brought in to mind the store. The world did not fall off its axis, and I am significantly better off for the time I spent investing in my health, both mental and physical. I am proud of my congregation, and I am proud of myself for being more proactive. During this time off, I had a chance to consider more than just my work and the day-to-day strains of parish ministry. I had the opportunity to do a significant amount of reflection, writing, and research. I looked back at some of my writing over the last 10 years, which includes my time in seminary, my internship, and my settlement in called ministry. I looked at the writing of my colleagues, both in various magazines and in academic journals, as well as looking closely at the widening the circle of concern. The report from the Unitarian Universalist Commission on Institutional Change. I talked to colleagues, both white and people of color. I talked to colleagues outside of Unitarian Universalism, and I talked to people in ministerial formation. I also witnessed more death from stress-related diseases and more religious professionals pulling up stakes. Although I'm well aware that the pandemic had an effect on us all, I am mostly aware, through my own experience, that it really just amplified what we were all experiencing already. We may have been willing to hang on in a job because we knew we needed to be practical, or we had some vision of ourselves that was better than just walking away. However, in the end, the impulse to say simply enough was always there. I also had the opportunity to witness one of the most important processes within Unitarian Universalism reveal its toxicity as a gatekeeping tool designed to harm people of color. I will not name the process or the people because that is a situation that is still unfolding. Suffice it to say, more than anything, that process and its utter failure makes it clear to me that a culture of non-accountability, both intentionally and unintentionally, built around congregational polity is destroying us. Puritan congregational polity, from which Unitarian Universalism originates, was born out of a 17th century European white-centric colonial impulse for religious self-determination. I will not go into the finer points here. The important thing to understand is that today, the idea of each congregation being its own governing and responsible body is the primary ethical foundation for Unitarian Universalism as an association of congregations, as opposed to being a religious denomination. Governance, not doctrine, is what officially connects Unitarian Universalists. Free will, self-determination, self-definition, the sole ability and responsibility to call and ordain clergy. These are what we, as modern UUs, are told over and over again are the most important parts of how and why we gather. It is a structure of governance that affirms our commitment to individualism and also heavily influenced the foundation for the structure of the United States government. Think states' rights. And congregational polity came from the same people who enslaved Africans and killed Native people and who were conflicted for 200 or more years over the financial impact of abolition. United States government, the Unitarian United States President Millard Fillmore signed the Fugitive Slave Law and supported back to African movements, Native removal, and certain Jim Crow segregations. But that was then. Surely, self-determination and importance of the individual as theology are more relevant than ever today in a world where voting rights, abortion rights, transgender rights, economic rights, housing and healthcare rights are under attack. Maybe. But at what cost in our organizations? The most common complaint I hear from my colleagues of color, and what is painfully well documented, is how they are often literally used up by UU congregations. While they are asked to lead the justice movements of well-meaning, predominantly white liberal communities, they are also being held to unsustainable standards of overfunctioning. Leaders of color are constantly having to play translator to an absurdly and almost arrogant ignorance around how to be in relationship across multiple cultures and identities. The result is that many are burned out and burned up. Many UU religious professionals of color are less in the business of being religious professionals and more so tasked with herding communities of extremely pampered cats who are just as quick to scratch and bite as they are to cuddle and purr. Many UU leaders of color never know which one is coming next, fur or fangs. Sadly, for many religious professionals of all stripes, our congregations become clubs of individuals who use the word independence as an aspiration, as a religion, and as a weapon. It is no small task for any minister, religious professional, or leader to take this on, let alone when you are constantly having to create, define, explain, educate, and too often defend your own social location. Then, when our communities have truly devastating challenges, there is no overarching entity to which anyone will answer, because we are self-determining, right? Religious professionals are abused, ministers are undermined, lay leaders are subverted, and when it comes time for another new leader to come along and fix things, they can't, although they continue to try. Too often, the cloak of congregational polity shrouds a self-defining cycle of harm with no culture or accountability outside of self-reference. The end result is generation after generation of toxic behavior disguised as individuals or people being just who they are. We must ask more of ourselves. We must ask more of faith, even if many UU individuals bristle at that word. What we have lost track of is that faith is not an excuse for your failings, whether that is bigotry or bullying. Faith is simply an invitation to do better. If congregations are where our leaders are grown, endorsed, and certified by the wider community, be they religious educators, ministers, administrators, or other leaders, it stands to reason that there must be some standard to which those incubators of the future are held. Without a standard, we get independence, sure. We get self-determination, yes, and we also get veiled racist excuses, negotiated resignations, sudden disappearances, and what can only be called a frayed and inconsistent history of damage, suspicion, and dread. Congregational polity is destroying people of color because having a heightened focus on the individual means being a person of color in itself becomes the primary focal point of our individuality. Focus on our individual difference from the dominant culture is how people of color have survived in the wake of colonial oppression and ongoing mental and physical Eurocentric occupation. Speaking from my perspective as a Black American, I know that we value the individual as much as anyone, and we have also gathered and communicated and built languages and accountabilities in our communities that constantly call each other in. Regardless of religion, solidarity has been our savior. It is not perfect, but we is taught to us to be equally prominent as the me. The first thing my mother expressed to me when I came out as gay was a worry about what other Black people would think. Now that will sound like the greatest tragedy to a white UU, and sure, it was problematic for many reasons. At the same time, it made perfect sense to me because accountability to the Black community had been drummed into my head from before I could speak. I was taught that I am and will always be part of and representative of what it means to be Black in America. And that accountability was never presented as a burden, no matter how challenging. It was offered to me as a gift of belonging, so that I would always do me and mine proud, so that in a world where I had been robbed of my history, I would always have a place to culturally call home. If Unitarian Universalists are going to actually become anything even vaguely close to what we say we want to be, we have to let go of unexamined congregational polity as a foundation for community. Congregational polity was born out of white supremacy mixed with fear and paranoia, not just of people of color, but the fear of other whites. It is a structure that rests entirely on the concept of what separates people. Being somehow united in separateness feels counterproductive to the modern mission of Unitarian Universalism. Why not build ourselves on what we share in accountabilities, goals, equity, and peace? What is more perpetuating this posture of distance? Perpetuating this posture of distance can only mean ongoing pain for those of us who are harmed by its legacy. It is high time Unitarian Universalists have some guts and build something that works for all of us, not a retrofit or rethink, a clean slate. Build something new that contains some of the bricks that I bring from my African and Caribbean roots, some of the bricks from the Latinx diaspora, some of the bricks of the vastness that is Asian American, what does that stand for, AAPI? Pacific Islanders culture. Some of the bricks of indigence, bricks of different ability, bricks of gender nonconformity. Until we do, marginalized communities will always be marginalized within Unitarian Universalism. Specifically, people of color will always begin their journey in Unitarian Universalism from the outside, even when they have been born into it. The traditional wall of congregational polity is built entirely of white bricks. Tear down this wall.
Morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem we were seeking to. Morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem we were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. And I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
There is no freedom, the wise man said, let justice roll down when the poor cry out for shelter and bread. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Hatred will never drive out hate. Let love roll down, roll down. Remember, our hearts can make us great. Let love roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary, walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let your love roll down like a mighty stream. When brutality threatens our daughters and sons, let peace roll down, roll down. May our voices rise up louder than the guns. Let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Step by step, one by one, let justice roll down, roll down. They can kill the prophet, but the dream lives on. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream.
I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.